Hello, and welcome to this video on freezing your oct. Holding, halting, and disrupting your modulation in creative and interesting ways. Here's what's to come in the video. This video is sponsored by me. Go buy an oct. If you have an oct, get another. Grab the expander. Do it now! So hopefully, if you're watching this video, you already know what oct is. If you're new to oct or the expander, check out the videos linked down below. But this video is all about freezing your oct. Not literally, I can't promise you'll get any cooling refreshment in the summer from actually having it in the freezer before you use it, but I did in the initial release video for oct show you how to freeze the output, like there's 8 track and hold circuits over those outputs. And I think that's been missed by some people, or at least it's maybe a bit underexplored, but it can be a really creative and interesting approach to how you play with and modulate your patches. So without any external influence, turning the rate all the way down gives you a slow rate of about 25 minutes per LFO cycle there. Adding in some extra negative voltage into the CV input, or even a positive voltage that you then invert on this attenuverter, allows you to take that even slower and slow those analog core circuits down so much that they act like they're frozen, as if there's 8 track and holds on oct that stall all those outputs. It's a really simple trick that's easy to implement but super powerful for either manual, human interruptions across a whole or small part of a patch. You can do it with clocks and gates in interesting rhythmic ways too, and I keep finding new ways to use it. I'd love to hear your ideas about freezing the outputs on your oct modules, and some of those could make it into a follow-up video in the future too. The free patches for this video are on screen, they're linked down below to skip around along with some other links to check out too. But without further ado, let's dive in. So for this first example, oct is driving literally everything. Our pitch changes, all our modulation of sound here on Platts and Ceremony, our effects levels, everything is driven from either oct or expander outputs. I have an external keyboard off screen, kind of no reason to watch me just press a key, but the gate output from that is coming in on this pink cable, and then that will light up this LED cable, which is going into the CV input. So this is a gate signal. And then rather than having a negative voltage, it's a 5-volt gate signal here. I've just turned the attenuverter to invert that. And when I press a key, everything freezes. Now just to run through the patch here, it's Platts, with pitch sequencing quantized in this quantizer here from the max and min outputs. On the expander, I'm using some vibrato style FM modulation on Platts, modulation of the 3 tonal parameters. That's coming into Ceremony where the dual filters and all the interaction and FM between them is being modulated. And that's my dry sound here in the mixer. And again, I can freeze this, just completely stalling all those outputs. I then have, separately to the dry sound, a split of that dry sound into my effects here, and I'm modulating the level of those effects with the VCA on the mixer. That's attenuated slightly, but that's one of the unipolar outputs there. So as I'm freezing this, I can freeze that sound with quite a high effects level. Or freeze that when the effects level is lower. Dry sound back in the mix. And what's quite interesting outside of freezing oct here is just using a gate and a little bit of a tenuversion here, so some slight negative level, just as a method to slow down a patch. So I'll let this play for a second. This will go red as I hit a key, and everything will just kind of shift gear and slow down. For this patch example, with a gate, it could be an offset voltage, could be a button you press, a joystick, a clock even. Just fully attenuating here. Every time I press a key, we completely freeze with that track and hold style method, where it passes a signal or holds a signal. And it's a really lovely way to interact with a patch, an oct, and the expander. So here's an extension of the previous patch, this time playing around with using clocks and probability over clocks to rhythmically interrupt, hold, disrupt and freeze oct based off of playing arpeggio. You can see the whole patch here. There is one additional layer that we'll go through, and there's the keyboard just off screen. I'm going to record that on a second camera and I'll overlay some key presses. I'll just play around some chord tones to give some musical context, and then we'll get into it. So let's get into that new layer that wasn't in the previous patch that you saw, the previous example here in the video. And that's this quite basic arpeggio sound. It takes the second aux out from Platts into Trivium here, which is a VCA and filter with some envelopes. I have my volt per octave coming in off of my arpeggiator on the keyboard, and that just continually rolls around. It's not playing clocks or gates based on key presses. The arpeggiator's held, so that clock is just continually ticking, if you like. That comes into a mult here, and one copy triggers the envelopes here on Trivium, and that dry sound comes into the mix as a new layer. I do have an additional LFO patched from oct to the panning in the mixer, so hopefully you can hear this swaying from side to side. I have a copy of that clock coming down into DivKid here in gate mode, and its first mode, probability, or Bernoulli gates coin tossing between two outputs. And when this is set to be the A output, which isn't patched, nothing comes through here. And if I move the probability on this knob to the B output, 100% that B output, it just sends a continual gate high. I'm inverting on the attenuverter on oct like I was before, and that's now holding. And for this layer, that holds all the tonal change on Platts and the panning position in the mixer. And with a probability that's then not 100% output A or B, on my clock pulses, this is disrupting oct, stalling it temporarily on the clock pulse, randomly and rhythmically, creating these interesting shifts in these LFOs where the really slow ones just kind of feel like they've slowed down for a bit and come back in. The faster ones kink and stall and hold into new shapes. Doing that on a clock pulse with the non-clocked, just free-running LFOs, I find really interesting. Now that on the layer that we had previously, which is the main out from Platts into ceremony, let's lean across so this gets more active. Or less active. We're just getting these rhythmic disruptions, which I find really satisfying. And we still have the effects here from Isu's trifecta, where one of the unipolar LFOs that's been attenuated is adjusting the level of effects in the VCA in the mixer. So bringing all of those back in. Now I'll just play some keys again here before we move on to another example. It's such an amazing thing to take a freely moving, modulating, kind of evocative, moving patch and just freeze it and find new tones in doing so. So here we're going to play around with freezing oct with an offset generator. It's this slider here, IOU from Apollo View, where I can increase the voltage, which is attenuated, so it's negatively pulling down the rate of oct. And we can do that until there's enough voltage to just freeze and hold all those outputs. And I really like this as a means of performing, playing around with the tones of all these rhythms, heavily clocked material in this kind of techno context. And I think when you're doing really heavy rhythmic things like the Euclidean patterns and sequences here, you might want clocked modulation, or you might think you do, but I think a little bit of free running modulation, or in this case, lots of all just completely unsynced free modulation, which is oct's speciality if you like. It works really well just to create this hypnotic movement where nothing moves bar to bar. One sound might grow as another closes, and that all just ebbs and flows and offers some really lovely movement to a really heavily rhythmic clocked patch. Now we'll go through sound by sound what's happening here. And the simplest two, just off screen, you're missing a little bit of my sequencing and drum sounds, but I have a kick playing quarter notes, an offbeat hi-hat which is just off screen coming in here, and those two sounds don't get affected by oct's outputs at all. The patch however started with Platts taking its two outputs to two channels on my mixer and using the green and blue traces here on this left hand data to pan these channels around. These are two alternative snare sounds, modulating and kind of exploiting the idea of it being a snare, but it's the snare drum mode. So they're panning freely, and how bright in terms of the noise and how long, and the tuning of those sounds is all being modulated. Now with that set as it is, if I start to add some voltage here, slowing down oct and the expander until it freezes, we can find these kind of moments in the sound. Let's do that over the kick and hi-hat. We can even make this sound really long. And freeze all that modulation. Finding different pannings, tones, amounts of noise. Now the other sounds. This is a hi-hat sound through the bandpass filter on Trivium here. All free modulation again. Different LFOs, some stepped DAC outputs here, unipolar LFOs, max and min from the oct expander. Now the next part of the patch here, I'm pinging ceremony, a filter here, or rather two filters in a more complex modulation network with FM and feedback. There's modulation of Q, which is the decay amount, playing around with the tunings and FM depths, and that goes into my effects here. And again, freezing all the modulation that comes across to the filter, which are these purple cables, they're not on any of the scopes. Really play around with and perform with how our tones and sounds are developing while a beat plays. So all of the elements affected by oct, which is everything other than the static kick and hi-hat, so everything else, slowly slowing it down, finding these frozen states. Let's bring in the other drums. If you've got this far in the video, drop a free sync down in the comments. How are you using Oct? Solo or with the expander? Do you ever freeze and hold those outputs? Let us know. Thanks for watching. Head to patreon.com/DivKid to join our community, support what we do, and gain access to exclusives. See you next time. Bye!